Hey, what's up, guys? You guys probably know this beautiful guy right over here, Ryan
Hello.
Helms. If you want to introduce yourself very quickly, dude.
What's up,
Or
every?
say hi.
Are we live in the group or on your personal page or what?
We are live in the group, and it's lagging a little bit on
Cool,
my end, but I think we're good. So,
cool. So, what's up, everyone? Ryan Helms, uh, actually Daxy's partner. We've teamed up on the podcast agency stuff about a few months. I don't know. Maybe what's it been like 2 months now or something like that?
yeah,
And
pretty much.
has it been that long? Yeah,
Yeah,
probably
it's
right
been a
at two
fun
months.
2 months.
Yeah. So it's been a crazy 2 months. But besides that, as it relates to podcasting, I started a podcast eight or 9 months ago now, and it was kind of, for me, it was a tool to get out and meet people and be surrounded by people that I wanted to learn from, and see how they were managing their life and managing work and growing a business. So my podcast is in the side hustle space. That's the niche that I went after, because that's the life that I live right now. I still have a day job, and trying to build something on the side. So made sense to want to surround myself with people that were either doing that or had done that within the past 4 years. So I built some criteria around my guests like that. And yeah, it went from 0 to 100,000 downloads in about 8 months. And yeah, I think we're at like 105 or 110,000 now. And it's been averaging between, I think between like 17 and 20,000 downloads a month at this point. I started out putting out some solo content recently. So I was doing two interviews every week, Monday and Wednesday. And now I do one interview on Monday and one solo episode on Wednesday, and just filling that out. Started that in December, trying to bring a little bit more personal brand to the podcast as well. But it's been a fun 8 months.
Yeah, and we're gonna try to position this interview for everyone who, even if you're worried you have zero audience or you don't know the tricks and strategies, we're gonna try to cover like in chronological order. We'll try to cover everything. But if you're on the replay, give me hashtag replay. You can ask your questions in the replay as well. Me and Ryan will answer them. And if you're on the live, give me hashtag live. We have one viewer. I don't know who that is. But so I want to start off. What why did you start a podcast first? And what were the after that, what are the reasons you would tell people to start a podcast for? But let's go with the first part. So
Yeah. So why did I start a podcast? So November 2017, I launched a Kickstarter, and I raised like 14,000 on a physical product called the Side Hustle Journal. And through that process, like going into that, I didn't know anybody in like the entrepreneur space. I couldn't have picked up my phone and like text or called or even like Facebook message an entrepreneur, quote unquote, even if I wanted to. So I didn't know anybody. So I went into this launching a Kickstarter totally blind. The only thing I knew is like, well, let me just Google and cold email as many people as humanly possible. So that's what I did. 400 or 500 emails later, I got a few replies. It was a long uphill battle just to raise 14,000 bucks. I got like 650 backers. Some of them went for like the PDF version. So I was offering a $1 PDF and then the physical journal as well. And so converted 650 people, made them pull out their credit card. So that was cool, but it was really, really tough. And I knew that if I did something like that again, I wanted to be able to leverage the expertise and the knowledge of other people that are kind of in this space and doing it and knowing it better, or people just, building businesses in general. So kind of step back after the Kickstarter and was like, all right, how can I put myself around these people? I did several things. One, like going out to like local events and things like that, surrounding myself just on Facebook with more people. But I was like, how can I like get like real FaceTime, good quality conversations with these people and really start to cultivate a relationship with the people I want to be around. So I decided to start a podcast. Had never interviewed anyone before, never thought about interviewing anyone before, had never published content in that type of way before, never ever, had zero audience at all. Like all I had was my personal Instagram with like 300 people, probably 98% of them that I went to high school with or college, and decided to jump in and lined up some interviews with people, obviously starting with people that I knew in some way from like the Kickstarter. Like I met several people that were, obviously it was a a product for people with side hustle. So I had some people that I just like sent a email blast out to. That was like the creation of my email list as well, was at Kickstarter. And I said like, hey, anybody have a side hustle that's making like $2,000 a month or $1,000 a month, whatever I said at the time, and line up some interviews and just went from there. And so I started it just to be surrounded by people.
Yeah. And what's up, Sashar and Maya? Thanks for the comments. If you have any questions for Ryan specifically, drop them below and we'll answer about how he got to this point. Like, what are your biggest struggles? What do you need help with? Drop them below. We'll answer here on this live. But I want you to explain kind of, people are like, why should I start a podcast in 2019? Or they're really like questioning like the vehicle of podcast. What do you think are the major reasons and the type of people who should start a podcast 2019?
Yeah, I think the reason it's great is because it's like an authority machine. I say it like, as soon as you put yourself out there, because it's not new. Like podcasting, what year did iTunes come out with that? Was it like 2003 or it was like it was around like that time, 2003. That's like when they released like the Apple Pod or iTunes podcast, as it was probably called then. But so it's not completely new, but it's still new to a lot of people as like a platform for that type of stuff. So like I knew that people still perceive it as somewhat of a new thing. So that can be the objection for a lot of people. Like, oh, I don't know if podcasting is the right tool for me, but you know, it is an authority machine. As soon as you launch a podcast, because it still does have some of that newness to it, people associate you as an expert, as an authority on something, whatever that topic is, because you're instantly like, you've put yourself out there, you're creating content, even if you're just interviewing people. So like I became an authority in like the side hustle niche. And I wasn't even putting out any solo content. The first 84 or 85 episodes, I was just interviewing people. That's all I was doing. I was just asking them questions. Only thing I had for me was I created a physical product, the Side Hustle Journal. That was it. That's the only thing that I really done in that space. And then I just interviewed a bunch of people and developed a reputation and some authority in the space simply because of that. And it's super, the main reason you should want to start a podcast is exactly that. It's a great vehicle to establish yourself as an authority on whatever topic it is. And yeah, and anyone that you ask to be on a podcast, like 95% of the time, they're going to say yes, unless you're like cold emailing like Tim Ferriss or something and like, hey bro, you want to be on a podcast? Yeah, that'll be the 5% that'll say no. But most people will say yes. So you'll get FaceTime with some great people.
It's insane, like how much you can do once you have an audience and how much you can leverage other people's time with your audience just to like start relationships. It's amazing. What's up, Marcin? I'm going to be in LA, dude, next week. So I don't know if you're there. I have a question, but first, what is this question we got here from Sashar? When you started, did you have any issues finding content to publish? Did you know your topic from the start, or did you find it along the way?
So I had my... So like I said, the first 85 episodes were all interviews. So that was my content. But so I had to find those people. And I had my niche beforehand because I knew I'd launched that product. So I wanted to go into that space because I kind of already entered there. And that was the path of least resistance for, that's how I looked at it. But so my content was the interview, finding the people to interview. And first I reached out to my initial audience, and then I got a little bit creative, and I found people that were already interviewing my ideal guest, and they put just like I do now, and somebody could do this for me as well. They created a blog post for every episode, and I paid a guy in Bangladesh like I think I paid him $20 for every 100 rows that he put in the spreadsheet. So I told him, hey man, go to this website, go page by page into these blog posts, pull out the person's first name, last name, email address, a short description of their business, and their URL, their website URL. And for $20 for 100 rows of data, he gave me like 400 leads. And anytime I needed a guest, I went in that spreadsheet and I would send an email pretty much like a templated email with a couple, like 2 or 3 spots in it that I would customize to that person and to their business. And I would just email like 5 or 6 people at a time. Like if I needed a few guests, if I was running low, if my queue was draining up, I would interview 5 or 6 and then see who replied. Usually within 2 days, a couple people would reply. So I would line those up. And if next time I needed a few more, I'd go back to that list. I'd email a few more. And I would cross them off as I emailed them, so I didn't bug them and keep reaching out to them. And eventually, I haven't used that list in a while. Now everything comes organically to me. Like I don't have to reach out to anybody. People just seem to find it. But yeah, that's how I started out.
And that's a great tactic. Like people who are already being interviewed out there on like, I wouldn't say your competition, but people who are kind of in your zone of like where your audience would be. They're easy people to reach out to because they're already saying yes to other podcasts. So that's like a nice little ninja tactic. So Maya asked, I'm at episode 33. I'm at 1.7K listeners. I'm assuming total. Average listen 40. I don't know if that's age or amount. How do I grow faster?
I think it was she gets 40 downloads per episode on average.
40 is that math right? 40 times 33. Yeah.
It'd be somewhere around there.
It's a little lower, but yeah, okay.
So how do you grow faster? That's a good question. It's kind of difficult not knowing what all you're doing. So like we need to know like what's your niche? Like how are you reaching out to people? Are you reaching out to authority people in the niche? Because one of the good things about interviewing people is that you can try to leverage their audience to grow your platform. And there's a lot of things you can do to support that activity by creating that guest custom-made graphics, making it super easy for them to share, sending them emails, follow-up emails if they don't open it. I include the iframe snippet code for the media player in my email to the guest as well, after I've interviewed them, obviously, so that if they want to put it on their website, like some people have like testimonial pages, some people like to put places they've been featured. And if it turns out to be a good interview and you provide that little iframe code, they can embed that on their site. And every time somebody clicks that, you get a listen on your podcast. So yeah, I was actually, it's funny. I was just looking I reset my LastPass, so I can't pull up my analytics right now, but I was just looking at my analytics the other day, and like Twitter is like the 4th most listened to platform. So it's like Apple Podcast, like Castbox. And so like when I look through my
Twitter,
analytics,
like referral or listen, like they're actually listening on Twitter.
Yeah. So I don't, and it's like number 4. There was like 12,000 downloads off from Twitter. And I'm like, or 12,000 listens from Twitter. And I'm like,
told me this, dude.
Yeah. And I just like, this was just like yesterday. I was like, what? So you never like, the reason I bring that up is because like, just provide a bunch of different mechanisms for people to share your content, and you never know where it could end up. They could include the media player on their site, and you get a lot of traffic from that. You may send them an awesome looking graphic, and it's important to send like good looking graphics. Don't like think you're halfway good and use Canva and create something that looks like shit that nobody's gonna want to share. Like, even if you have to pay somebody to create a good looking template, like create something that people are going to want to share. And you never know, maybe they throw it up on Twitter and you get 9,000 downloads or 10,000, whatever I got from that. But yeah, that's just one thing you can do, not knowing much about what you're already doing or what your niche is.
Yeah. So honestly, that we're going to probably do another Facebook Live on growing using other people's platforms, because that's a big, like there's several steps to that. But like what Ryan just said, the creative is such a big factor. Like people won't share it if it doesn't look shareable. Like if it doesn't make them look good, they're not going to want to promote it. But if you make them look good and you shine them in the right light, and you kind of like repurpose the conversation where it's like looks engaging to like listen to, then they'll more than like gladly share it, because they're like, oh, this is like promoting me as well as promoting you. Maya says, I'm getting most of my listeners from Twitter. What is going on? I don't even log into Twitter. Okay,
I don't either, man. I don't do anything on Twitter, so it's obviously people sharing on Twitter,
or like your guests are sharing it.
It would be my guest sharing it on Twitter. Like it's not me at all. Like I don't do anything with Twitter.
Nice. You good? Cool. So next question, what are some, like, if people, well, I mean, even people who have a podcast, or, and for people who aren't starting, like, what are some like expectations you tell them to have depending on like where they're starting from?
It's not going to grow quickly. So I think my first month,
I think
I
you told
had
me this too, like, not in your mind, you're like, I'm not going to monetize this till I get to 100 episodes or something like that.
yeah, exactly. So, expectations, like it'll grow slow depending on your audience in the beginning. So I think my first month I had like, I think it was like 233 downloads the first month, and that was, I mean, it's like I didn't know what to expect. Like one, I 433, and I didn't know like what to expect because I didn't know other people that were podcasting. I just knew that, like, hey, I'm gonna be in this for the long haul. And I said going into it up front, like, I'm putting out 100 episodes, whether like 2 people listen to it or 200,000 people listen to it. I'm gonna put out 100 episodes. Like that's what I committed to in the beginning. But so I really honestly didn't know what to expect. But now that I've done this and we've helped other people launch podcasts, and I've just assisted people from the sidelines also launching podcasts, like, the expectation is it's going to be slow in the beginning, especially if you don't have a big audience. So you need to really get kind of ninja on some of the things you do, maximizing like the SEO within your podcast name, episode names, all that kind of stuff, so you can leverage organic traffic from places like iTunes and stuff like that. Don't think you're going to make $1 million off of a podcast right from the beginning. It's, with a smaller audience, it's an authority play, not a monetization play. You could monetize it once you build some trust and some good, deep relationships down the road. But I wouldn't go into it thinking like, oh, by like episode 5, I'm going to start trying to monetize this and sell something to these people. I think the first time I put anything that could possibly make me money, I was like episode 55. I think somewhere around there. And it was literally just in my outro. Like I was like, here's 5 ways you could support the podcast. Like at the outro, like, not obnoxious or anything like that. It's like, if they made it all the way to the end, obviously they like the content and there's something about it that they enjoy. So I don't think they would be upset with me hitting them with, here's 4 ways or 5 ways you can support the podcast.
Yeah. And a lot of like growing is very, very specific to your situation. Like, what is your demographics? Like, where does your audience hang out, and how can you market to them? And like get them to like listen to your podcast more and like fall in love with you. What would you like, how would you say like people to like, have a stronger commitment to podcasting who are struggling with seeing like the purpose of it, even though like the average listen time of a pod, like I like to think of like, if someone downloads your podcast, like the best thing in marketing is attention. Like, you want people's undivided attention. That's very hard on different platforms. But in podcasting, it's like you can't listen to a podcast without your full attention. It's like it has someone like focus on you like completely. So it's so powerful if you can like master it. So like, how would you like tell people to like think so they can like commit to it more? So
yeah, I would think like if you want to commit to it and you're struggling, like you need to understand that there's 2 real ways that it can help you out if you don't have a big audience. It's going to create authority for you, like I was mentioning earlier. You're going to establish yourself as an expert in your niche. And then because of that, and just because you have a podcast, you can get in front of people that would never have talked to you before. Like if you would cold email or shoot somebody like a Facebook message or something and say it was like some influencer in your niche, and you were like, hey man, I'd love to hop on a Zoom and talk to you for 30 minutes. I have some questions. They'd like, go kick rocks, kid. I'm not wasting 30 minutes talking to you. Like, are you smoking dope? Like here, I'll send you a link. You can pay $97 for a coaching call. Or you can start a podcast and be like, hey, bro, I've got a podcast. I'm in your space. Like, I'd love to talk to you for 30 minutes and ask questions. You could ask the same damn questions that you would ask if it was like a coaching call, but it's free because you're exposing them to a different audience, a larger audience. And it's just a great vehicle to get in front of people and really kind of like hack that.
And I feel like people, like when you interview people, they speak way differently. I mean, everyone's different, but like when they in their mind know that there's an audience listening, they're like more like it's showtime, and they're more like, they're like talking one-on-one to someone, they're more like laid back and they're not like as serious. But if it's like in an interview format, you'll get the best answers. Like you'll get their like best cream of the crop. So
And one thing before we move on to that, like a good thing about like having those people's attention and doing the interview is like when the interview's done and you hit stop recording, like, you know how many times I've been like, hey man, you said one thing, like I'd love to just pick your brain on that a little bit more. Like, what did you mean by that? And then like, even after the interview's off and, you know, maybe they're a little bit more candid or they open up a little bit more because maybe it's like their secret sauce or something like that. But if it's like, you've went through a 30-minute or an hour-long interview, you've built that relationship, you've got some trust, and then you can like pick their brain on a couple of things afterwards. I've found that that's pretty cool to do and kind of further connects you to, and they seem to be pretty open to that.
Yeah. I want to kind of dive deeper on that. And also like something that is like real is like there's a thing, talk therapy. Like I don't know what it is. Like in our normal day-to-day life, we don't have like deep, meaningful conversations, but there's a lot of value in that. Like with social media, nothing's really deep. It's very like superficial and like, you know, surface level. But like, I feel like in podcasts and interviews, you can like get that fulfillment and actually like focus on a conversation for an hour, which nobody usually does anymore. You know, like we're usually consuming, not like engaging, like back and forth. So as a host, it's very powerful. So like let's talk about this because now I don't think a lot of people talk about this, like the post-interview process. You say like, all right, you just interview them. So what are the opportunities after you just interview them? I know one for sure is like you can ask them, hey, who are another few people that I can get on who are like you think will be good for this show, blah, blah, blah. What else is like post-interview so people get most value?
Yeah, so that's obviously a good one. Like, hey, do you have, if you thought this was good and you think the exposure will be good for you, I'd love if you could connect me with other people in your network that may also be able to use my podcast as a platform. Something else that I like to do, depending on the context of the interview. So like Daxie, you and I have the podcast agency. A lot of times now that we've got this up and running, if like anytime like during the interview, like we got to anything about podcasting, like they mentioned podcasting, they talked about podcasting, it got brought up at all. Like after the interview, I'd be like, hey, I know you chatted about podcasting. Just to FYI, my partner Daxie and I have a podcast agency. So if you're ever interested in that, just let me know. Like I don't push it or like try to pitch them anything or anything like that. I just drop a line because you never know like what they may be interested in or who they know that may be interested in something, because you just got out of a deep conversation where the trust factor is pretty high at this point. And if you just tell them about something that you're doing in a non-salesy type of way, it can be a good opportunity to see if possibly something could happen.
Yeah. And we still have some people on here. We got 5 awesome people. Give me a hashtag live if you're here. And also, if you have any specific questions about podcasting that you're struggling with or you need help with, we've been around the block. So ask them below while we're here and you have our attention, because a lot of you guys have been messaging me in Messenger and I've like not been reading it as much. It's just been flooded. So I kind of want to talk about presenting yourself in the interview, because I think that's really important, because you could get those interviews and you could position yourself, but then you could fuck it up. So like, what are some like key principles to like whether it's preparation or like how you
on the host side, like as a host
side. Yeah.
So for me, my process is I take them through a Calendly intake form. So I use Calendly to kind of book and set everything up. And during that, I think you can ask, what is it, like 4 questions in Calendly or something like that. So I ask them, first I use Calendly to qualify them, to make sure, because I have my, like someone could connect with me personally and I could ask them about what they're doing and qualify them that way. But I also have it on my website to where somebody can go on my site and book a slot. So within Calendly, I also qualify those people that I don't possibly have never talked to before. So the first 2 questions in my Calendly are qualifying questions. Basically, do they meet the criteria of my guest? And the next 2 questions are about them. One question is about them, and the next question is about like what's possible interview topics that they're comfortable talking about. So that triggers off via Zapier. It creates it does a lot of shit. It triggers a lot of things. One of the things it does also is creates an Evernote, and that's kind of what I use for the interview preparation. So I take what they responded back in the Calendly form. It's got their website and all that kind of stuff in there, and I do some quick research on the person. Depending on the topic and your niche, it'll depend on how much research you have to do. But I just go in and try to get a feel for them. Me personally, I try not to do too much like in-depth research on them because I want like the natural curiosity to come out like during the interview process. But I go in, I browse around, look at their questions, formulate my own questions based on their website, what they're doing, what they told me about themselves. Sometimes I'll listen to some other interviews they've done, and then I just note all that down in Evernote, and I let that just guide my conversation with the person. I never let it drive the conversation. I let it guide the conversation. There's a big difference. You don't want to sound robotic and jump from topic to topic to topic because that's the list that that's the number that your questions are in. You want to follow 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, don't do that. Just have some questions down that you can reference if needed. I call them like, oh shit questions. They're never anything that I'm going to like I'm going to hit all 6 of these questions. I just want to have a good conversation with somebody. And if I get to a point where like there was like whatever they said didn't lead me naturally to another question, like nothing like came to mind, or I like spaced out, because it happens. Like there'll be sometimes somebody will be talking and my mind will just like go in left field, and I'm like, oh shit, I really didn't catch everything they said right there. So then I like look down and there's one of my oh shit questions, and I'll reference it, and it'll get us back on track in some type of way. So that's what I do, and also take a few notes throughout the interview. Like a couple of things that I do is I'll note down like any major points to where any major edits need to take place. I'll note down any URLs that the person mentions. And it can be all shorthand. Like I'm not typing like complete sentences and stuff. I'm just typing stuff that I'll know what the hell I meant later on when I read it. And
this is all skills, guys. Like you're not going to be amazing at first. It's like a habit you have to instill in your mind to like take notes and prepare and all this stuff. And actually like everything that you mentioned, your Zapier process to the note taking, to the Evernote, to the Trello, like that's all in our course, guys, 7-figure downloads, which I'm filming some videos soon. Like we're going to be relaunching probably early February. And it's going to have a lot more content. So if you're in it, go in there now. If you're like curious about anything you said, because it's in the course.
Yeah, absolutely. Step by step, my whole process that I just laid out there, the automated side of it. So how to set all the tech side of all that up. So when somebody comes in through your Calendly, like it'll trigger off like the Evernote automatically. It'll kick off the process workflow and Trello, like the whole 9 yards. All that's in the 7-figure download course.
Even the note taking and like the whole like, interviewing. And so I want to talk about this so we can wrap up with this. So we're not on this call all day, because I want to do more lives like this actually, Ryan. Where it's just probably we could make it shorter, like 10-15 minutes, but it's just like one topic, not like an interview style. We can just riff on it. But I want to ask you this because I recently did a story on my Facebook about like tips on being interviewed. What are the most important tips? And I got a lot of replies. Like a lot of people liked it. So I'm probably going to do some sort of lead magnet out of it. But that's a big, I see in the coming year to grow your brand is being interviewed, not just interviewing people. That puts you in a position of authority, and you can like, have that on your homepage. Like I was interviewed here. And a lot of people aren't like, it's such an easy process, but people just like, they don't think they can do it. So what are some best practices that you found being interviewed? Like what, let's skip some of the steps, like the publicity sheet and outreach.
Sure.
Let's just go to like the actual interview process. Like how do you prepare for that?
Yeah. So one thing you can do that will make the expectations of the interview like crystal clear, right? And meaning the expectations of like how is it going to be for you as the interviewee. One thing that you can do is provide the host with a list of questions that you're comfortable talking about, whether they ask you or not. Be like, here's 3 topics that I would love to talk about, like, or I can talk about broadly. And here's like 6 to 10 questions that you can ask me. Because the funny thing is, like, if you want to make sure the interview goes exactly in your favor, if you give someone 6 to 10 questions, like I don't have any like stats or proof behind this, but I think like 9 times out of 10, they're gonna ask you those 6 to 10 questions. Like verbatim, like they're going to list them down and they're going to ask you those questions. So you'll be 100% prepared to be the ultimate authority and have the most polished possible response to those questions. So that's like a big thing to like control the narrative of the conversation, is to provide those exact questions that you're the expert on answering up front. So to me, that's like a huge one for making sure you have like a really, really good interview. And I'm trying to think like what else someone could do, like the publicity sheet. That's
what are some like no-nos to do in an interview, I guess, or like what do you like try to refrain
from? Like
how do you think about pitching in an interview? I mean, usually that's a conversation with the host, but
yeah. Typically, I like, so what I do when I'm on the host side is I'm okay if somebody wants to pitch their stuff. Like, cool, they agreed to be on a thing, but like, let's just talk about it up front so I can help frame it up for them, so they don't have to like throw it out of left field and it seems like kind of awkward. I always ask them like, hey, do you have like a product, a service, a launch, anything that you want to make sure we get to? And then if they say, yeah, like this is what it is, I keep that in the back of my head. I note it down in my Evernote, and then I go back and my eyes on that topics throughout the conversation. I see if there's a way I can tie that in naturally so it flows and it doesn't come off salesy, so that people are being exposed to a sales message and they don't really know they're being exposed to a sales message, because most of the time people don't want to be sold to on a podcast. They want it to be a value play, and they want to be exposed to some great content, not necessarily like hard pitched. So I try to like weave it into the content as on the host side. And then if I'm on the interviewee side, same thing. I would be like, hey man, we've got this really awesome course. I would love if we could weave it into the conversation somehow. I would just, when I'm on the other side, I tell them that, knowing that that's what I like to do on the host side. I'm like, can we try to weave this message in there some type of way? Yeah.
And you have to remember, like, people aren't used to being sold on podcast. They don't want to be sold because like the consumption rate is so high. They're used to just like listening, and they're not in a state of like, all right, let me buy. Like, it's not an easy like transaction. So usually you use podcasts as a funnel to get them somewhere else, and then take them through that selling process to qualify them.
Yeah.
So with that said, if you guys are still here and you like the tips we shared, if you got anything from it, give me a hashtag value so I know you got something from it. We'll show you some love in the comments. And if you also have any other ideas, we want to, I mean, I don't know about you, Ryan, but I would love to do these like 10, 15 minutes a week or something, just like a singular topic, go deep on it, questions live. So if you guys have any suggestions, drop them below, and we'll do that. Thanks for watching, guys. Any last words, Ryan?
Nope, I'm good. Yeah, drop some questions down below. That'd be the best way. A lot better than Facebook messages, because a lot more people get exposed to the answer, and a lot of people probably have the same question as you. So no need to ask it in private, put it out there in public, and maybe we can help you and some other people.
Yes. Yeah. Drop a hashtag value. That helps the post too, helps it boost in the algorithms. So more people could see it, more people get exposed to this. We got a hashtag great value, above and beyond, bro. Thank you. So yeah, with that, peace out, guys, and we'll talk soon.
Peace.